everybody, Casey Faris here. I make videos on post-production here on YouTube. Today we're talking about some basic color correction stuff, specifically about Windows. And no, I'm not talking about like Microsoft Windows. No, I'm talking about basically masking inside of the color page. What do I mean by that? Well, why don't I just close some stuff out of the way and I'll show you. By the way, if you're interested in learning color, we just came out with a color grading course, Professional Color Grading in DaVinci Resolve. This is a huge course where we go over every aspect that I could think of. We start from the really basic concepts and build on that to cover pretty much everything that you need to know about color grading your projects in Resolve. This is the most detailed color grading course I've ever made. You can download footage and follow along. And if you buy the training once, we're going to update it whenever they update Resolve. And if you're watching this before March 20th, 2022, you can get $100 off with the code COLOR100. So make sure to check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. Let's get to it. Here we have Lady looking at camera, and maybe for whatever reason we want to brighten up her face. Well, we can select just her face with a mask, what DaVinci Resolve calls a window, and only affect her face with our adjustments. So how do we do that? It's best to do this in a separate node from all your other corrections. If you're not familiar with nodes, it's basically a group of corrections. So anything that we do to this image right now, if we brighten it, darken it, whatever, all of those adjustments that we make down here lives in a node. But if I want to affect just her face, I'm going to do that in a second node. So I'll go over here to our first node, right click and say add node, add serial. And let's right click here and node label, and we'll call this face. And now in the center palette, or if you have a different screen layout than mine, look for this little ellipse with the control points on it, where if you mouse over it, it says window. And that will switch to the Windows palette. And there's all kind of masks that you can select. The one I like to use most of the time is the circle mask. And boom, as soon as we click that, it adds a circle mask here to our screen. Now I can put this over her face like this. I can adjust these little edges to soften this out a little bit. And now whatever adjustments I make only happen inside of that window. Couple of little pro tips here. A little trick that I use to kind of help me figure out where the window exactly should go and how soft it should be is just push a lot of color into it, because we can always reset this correction down here. We put a whole bunch of color into it like this, and then hide this overlay somehow. You can do that a couple ways. You can go to the lower left of our viewer here and just click on this little overlay button and select off, and that works. But then if you want to adjust anything, you have to go back here and select it again, and it's kind of annoying. So what I do, and what I've seen a lot of other colorists do, is just switch to a different palette down here, like the curves palette. And that will hide everything for now, and you can kind of see how it's being affected. And pretty good rule of thumb, if you put in just a super crazy correction like this, and obviously this doesn't look realistic, right? But it doesn't really look like I put a circle window here. It looks like she's just kind of glowing. So chances are, if this looks reasonable, other than it's obviously really purple, you don't see any harsh edges or anything like that, it's not selecting a whole bunch of the background, then once I do my legitimate correction, like maybe pushing up my gamma a little bit, pushing up my saturation, then that's going to look really natural, and you aren't even going to be able to tell that I did something there. Another tip here with Windows is you can actually track a window, because check this out. If we have a moving shot, this window doesn't really stay on her face, right? So it's possible we're going to have some problems with this kind of lighting up the background in an unnatural way. So what we can do is put this over her face and then go down to our tracker palette, which by default tracks the current window, and click this track forward and reverse, and look what it does. Oh, baby, it just tracks it so easily. Look at that, just sticks to her face. Amazing. So now we don't even have to worry about that. Pretty awesome. Play it back and forth, make sure it looks nice. Oh, dang, look at this. It's great. There are a whole bunch of different kinds of windows. You can put multiple windows on one node, but usually what I like to do is make a parallel node, add parallel, because a lot of the time what I want to do is, brighten a certain part, darken another part, and kind of work on a bunch of aspects of the image all at the same time, which is a great reason to use parallel nodes. If you're like, what? Parallel nodes? What are you talking about? It's not really that important. Until you get a little bit deeper into color, you can just use a regular serial node. It's not going to make that huge of a difference. But I can take another node here and do something like, maybe I want to darken my background a little bit, roll down on my gain a little bit, roll down on my gamma. And now that's just affecting that left edge, and you can mix and match these to really refine your image. Okay, one last tip. It's really cool that you can track things, but what I always try and do is make my window kind of so big and soft that it doesn't even matter if you track it, right? So we tracked her face, but let's just go ahead and reset this node grade. We can make a really soft correction here, do kind of my same thing. And if we move this back and forth, it doesn't move around that much. And if I soften this window enough, you're like never going to tell. You're never going to be able to tell that there's a window there. And I don't even have to track it. I think that's the ideal situation, is to have a great big soft window that you don't have to track. The advantage there being, if you're color grading like 1,000 shots, cutting out a step from each shot will just save you time. But if you're working on just 1 or 2 shots, might as well make this a little bit nicer and track it with the tracker palette because it goes pretty quick. So yeah, there's a little crash course on Windows. Hope that was helpful for you. Again, make sure to check out that color course. I'll put a link right here. And I haven't thought of an awkward way to end this one. So I was thinking about maybe a joke about Windows, like Microsoft Windows, or maybe something involving a windmill, but it was too far of a stretch. So I'll leave you with this. When you're done working on part of a shot, make sure to go down here to the palettes and close the windows, or else you might get a draft. I'm so sorry.